for a couple of slight problems there, which we seem to have got over. So hopefully everything's going to run. Well, I'll be hosting the news today, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio is Nick Green behind the technical desk. And we're going to be joined initially by John Hurst, who is going to give an on-the-road update as to what he's been up to. Weather across the country, all the weather reports that we've had in today are generally sunshine and good. Some places a little more cloudy, but it looks as though we've got a bit of summer for the end of June. Okay, well, let's see whether we can bring in John Hurst. We should have him. And I understand, John, you are parked in a lay-by somewhere.
Yeah, I'm in a little housing estate in Gloucestershire. I'm taking advantage of BT's roving free Wi-Fi, so it's working really well.
Okay, excellent. And tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, because I know that you have been extremely busy over the last few weeks in particular. You've been travelling from court to court. What's actually been happening? And people are really pretty desperate for good news. Can you give us some good news?
I can. Well, it's your fault, Brian, but your speciality is delegation, so I'm not objecting. People feed stuff to you, and you delegate again, and that's what I've been doing. As I say, I'm not particularly clever, but I've got a good memory, so I've been in a position to gather information, which I can now share. The two magic words I've been researching are capitalisation and securitisation. So I'll first explain capitalisation. Capitalisation is the concept of when you take a loan, you borrow a sum of money. Well, you don't, in fact, borrow money. You advance credit, and then the person who's loaned you the money will then, hidden away in the contract, will have rules about how the payback is administered, and typically there will be penalty clauses. If you fall behind or something goes wrong, then they will penalise you, and it would appear it's unlawful to add the penalties to the lump sum, because the penalties are one-off charges for doing something wrong, and the lump sum is being paid back with interest. And to allocate penalties to the lump sum is called capitalisation. And the first court in the United Kingdom to confirm that is unlawful is in fact the Northern Ireland High Court. It's a case called Ray. I've written an article about what I've discovered and dispatched it to your office, and I dare say you'll put it online shortly, which will explain the details and how to find details of that particular case. So the case of Ray is taken up. It's a chap's got a mortgage. His case is taken up by a housing trust on a pro bono basis, and representations were made at the Irish High Court about 18 months ago to say that this business of adding penalties to the lump sum was unlawful, and the court agreed. And in fact, the court agreed so much it referred the case to the Attorney General of Northern Ireland, who issued an instruction that any cases in the pipeline in relation to that particular bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, should be held until the RIA case is finalised. So it's not completely finalised yet, but it's well on the way, and it established the principle that penalty charges are one thing, and lump sum is the other, and the two shouldn't be joined. Go on.
So, John, just for people who may be new to this subject, what we're essentially talking about here is a focus on how mortgages and other loans, but let's talk mortgages because this is a serious factor that affects a lot of people. The mortgages, we think we're borrowing sums of money principally out of the reserves of building societies and banks. That's not the case. What they're actually doing is making credit facilities available. So that's one layer of fraud, deception on the public. And then you're saying the second one is that they're coming up with charges if you're late paying or whatever, but these charges are added to the capital sum, and then the interest is accrued on that, which is itself capitalisation. So did I hear that correctly, that now in a Northern Ireland court, this has actually been ruled on by a judge, or is that hearing still in process?
Well, it's in process because the convention is only a court can actually rule what the law is. But certainly there's a great deal of evidence being submitted that this is unlawful. You're quite right about we don't actually borrow anything. That's securitisation. I'll come to that next. It's just chronologically the capitalisation has come up first. So what I would suggest anybody would do is it's a research project in progress. and it's similar to the situation with the persecution strategies for social workers. I recommend anybody that's ever had a mortgage, and it also extends to loans and credit cards, to submit a freedom of information request, a subject access request. They take 40 days, and what we'd like to do is have a volume of these freedom of information requests that have been submitted. So we've got material to research on, and we'll teach you how to research it yourself. In actual fact, so. Anyone who's listening to this, if you can spare a tenner, that's the standard fee. I suggest a subject access request on any financial transaction you've had involving loans, because you could well find that this capitalisation process has been applied, and at the very least, it will mean that all the penalty fees and so on should be given back to you, and certainly interest should be given back to you as well. So I won't make promises beyond my power, but it appears to me that's the case. So if you take that on board. The next bit is securitisation. So Mr. A, as we call him for legal reasons, appeared at Belfast High Court last Friday. An ongoing case to do with challenging where money came from, and as Brian observes, the question was asked: you were given the money, and because he says he wasn't given the money, he was advanced credit, which is a different thing. And because he was advanced credit, it cost the mortgage company nothing. They didn't lend him anything. If they transferred funds from a savings account into a mortgage account, it would have cost them something. But because it was all done electronically, it didn't. The bank, I would argue, is entitled to charge a small administration fee, but not 2 or 3 times the amount that he borrowed. And documents that Mr. A has obtained demonstrate the mortgage has been paid back at least twice, and we think 3 times. Let me give you an example. If you, when the mortgage company wants you to pay back, you have an endowment mortgage or a repayment mortgage, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's called a repayment mortgage. Well, that's because you paid already, and you pay when you submit the application form, which is a promissory note under the Bills of Exchange Act 1882. So they give you credit for, say, in this case, 200,000, and the applicant has submitted a promissory note for 200,000, so they balance. But the mortgage lender then has the cheek to ask you to repay again. That's why it's called a repayment. So that's why you pay twice. And as in the rear case, in Mr. A's case, large amounts of penalty charges have been added. And the purpose of these penalty charges, they're calculated to inflate the repayments to the point where the poor devil can't pay it anymore, and he's got 3 options. One is to give up and walk away from the mortgage. The other is to accept or take out another mortgage to extend the period. So his second mortgage he's paying interest on the penalty charges again. Or as Anthony's done, is to fight. And when I say fight, he's actually challenging the documentation. And the key to his case is he's got freedom of information requests or subject access requests, and he's got all the data that the company provides, and he's been able to work it out. And we can teach you how to work out what the codes mean. For example, when you get the printout, it'll have large columns of figures, and each column of figures, each line will have a 3-digit code for what the transaction was, and we'll teach you what those codes mean in reality. And that's the key, so you can understand the financial statement that comes back.
Right. John, this is really amazing and very big news, isn't it? Because, of course, the not only the number of people who are going to be affected by this criminal scam, because that's what it is, very large number of people holding mortgages. But the other thing I find interesting is, of course, all bands of society have held mortgages. And so we've got the interesting situation here that many people are deeply suspicious of the courts. They believe that certainly courts in Britain are corrupt. I would agree with that, having seen a few of the family courts in action. But we've now got the situation where we could have corrupt judges, for example, or corrupt barristers suddenly working out that they have themselves been defrauded by criminal activity by the banks. So could it just be that this is quite a powerful wedge to drive in the system, because most people are going to be interested in the subject? They've been defrauded over their mortgages, I would have thought.
Well, yes, indeed. The various acts of Parliament that cover the responsibilities of company directors in relation to responsibility for their underlings, and also positive responsibility to keep records. Now, one of the key records in a mortgage case is the form that the applicant signs, the loan agreement. Now, Santander at the beginning of Mr. A's case said, "Oh, we've destroyed it. It's our policy." Now, we think that's cover for the fact they've sold it, so they haven't got it anymore. And the point about culpability for officials of building societies and the managing director is this: it's before a civil court, but a civil court has powers to imprison people for contempt of court. And laying false information and starting off an action without justification is contempt of court. So Mr. A another application he's made is that he wants the CEO of Santander, a man called Bostock, if I remember correctly, to be committed, sent to prison, and also the barrister and the solicitor who are in court representing Santander. And at one point, the learned judge turned to the barrister and the solicitor. His hands were shaking and she was sweating, I must say. What would you like to say about this application to commit you, Mr. And a lot of lawyers were in the back of the room, and there was a shocked silence.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if it wasn't so serious. The barrister and the solicitor representing Santander were embarrassed because they didn't have the relevant textbook.
Yeah.
But Mr. A did, and he offered to lend them their copy. So the tradition is this: the case is put off until the end of the term. Courts have terms to the next term, which is in September. But in the meantime, Mr. A and I are preparing an application for that thing to be struck out because there's no case to answer. You recall that Mr. A's got a document that recalls the fact that at some point his total bill was zeroed, a payment was received and it went to zero, and that's the point where the fraud enters, because once the bill's paid, it's gone, and the person who's bought the article concerned doesn't have any rights to enforce the bill on the seller. Right. Because that's what they do. So we live in interesting times, and there are some embarrassed barristers. And one of the ploys that they've used in the food chain in the past is large companies employ solicitors on their payroll, and they prepare statements in civil cases that say, "To the best of my knowledge, and I believe, and I think," and that sort of thing, and then they sign the statement. And of course, from a policeman's point of view, that's no use whatsoever, is it? It's hearsay. It's not true. So Mr. A is wanting the managing director, the man who knows how the computer system works, and Santander initially denied that they do securitization, but Mr. A's identified the securitization department of Santander Legal Services. So he wants a lawyer who's the head of that to come to court to say, "Well, why have you got a securitization service if you don't do securitization?" And so on. So they really are on the spot.
Well, John, that's really excellent. Thank you for giving us that update. I understand you should be able to join us tomorrow. Is that still the case? We'll be able to get you online?
Yes. Hopefully the article will be published. If anybody's got any questions, you remember I undertook to do 10-minute videos. It's hard to me to judge what people are interested in. As my earlier request, if you ever had a mortgage, time to send in a subject access request for all material that they've got relating to you, all material. If they hide stuff, because we've got the definitive material on Royal Bank of Scotland, Santander, then they'll have a problem because we know they're hiding it, and the process then can be repeated with other bank lenders. But the game starts with the freedom of information or subject access request.
Right. Okay, John, thank you very much indeed for an excellent update. Enjoy the rest of your day, and your mobile studio's looking pretty good to us, I think.
Oh, it's we bought a big 4x4 this time because we both are quite tall, and it's really comfortable. I must press on because I need to make a rest stop. So
okay,
I'll watch the rest of it later. Is that all right?
That's fine. Excellent. Thanks very much.
Okay, then. Right. Bye bye.